I didn't unmute my mic. I've ruined it. What's poppin', gamers? Who's ready to rank some fucking frogs? That's so embarrassing. I had such a fucking way to pull in, show up, the fucking complete look. Fuck it up. Oh, I got even more. It's crazy. I'm fucking killing this shit. Alright. And bum bum bum. Here it is. The list. Alright. First things first. We gotta determine. So what the heck were the rules, you know? What were we doing? So I'm only ranking frogs if they're relevant enough to have their own wiki page. So like if it's got a mechanic attached to it, that's a ranking. If it's a character or an NPC, it's getting ranked. But if it's like, you know, the frogs in Stardew Valley where you break some grass and it just kind of hops out and it doesn't do anything, it's just background, not ranking that. That'd be too many. And they're too hard to find for games that I haven't played in my life. I've seen a tree. I went outside today. Fucker. All right. Let's classify these tiers. Try to zoom in a bit. Yeah, it's high. All right, we got the S tier, the goats. The everyone knows what S tier is. It's the best ones, the best of the best. A tier. It's pretty great frogs. Good frogs, you know? We love a good A tier. We need a lot of A tiers in our life. B tier? Yeah. That's a frog. C tier? At least it's a frog, you know? D tier? Not a big fan. Why are you the way that you are? It's like, why'd you even make it like this? And then F tier is the disgrace to frog kind. We don't want those. I have 116 frogs to rank. I got clips. I got information. I got so much shit about so many frogs you've never heard of in your goddamn life. And I don't even know. It's gonna be a time. Where's my other eyeball? There it is. Gotta get that. Both eyeballs on camera. Of course. Alright. And without further ado, if everyone's ready, why do we rank our first frog? I think I'm just gonna rock them in order, cause just fuck it. Why not? And very first is the Addled Frog from a very recent game of the year, Baldur's Gate 3. Now, it's just kind of a frog, to be honest. Though it is in a Dungeons and Dragons game. So you can speak to it if you can talk to animals through various methods. One of them is an animal speak potion. And if you do that, it tells you, it talks to you. And we are in fact ranking frogs. It talks to you and it thanks you for killing a witch if you killed the witch. And if you haven't killed the witch, it warns you about the witch. And you know what? That's a frog. He's a frog. I can't complain about no frog. He's frog-like. He does frog stuff. Not that important, not that unimportant. Can't complain. Alright, moving on. This is the monster ancient frog. I did get the Rivals frog. I promise you I got, if there's a frog you can think of, I probably got it, and if I don't, that's embarrassing. But yes, I have the Rivals frog. Alright. We got the ancient frog from Monster Boy. There's a longer name to this game title, but I don't know what the fuck it is. This frog's actually kind of sick. This frog is kind of sick. Let me hold up. We're gonna pause the music. I got gameplay footage of this frog here. it's kind of sick. You fight him as a snake, because the whole point of Monster Boy is that you can turn into different creatures. And you fight him as a snake, and that's kind of hype. And then, you know, he eats you. And then you fight him from the inside. And that's also kind of sick. I mean, it's the exact same thing that Yoshi did already with their frog, Prince Froggy. But, you know what? It's still cool. You know, it's a pretty cool boss fight for a game I never heard of. And there's other mini frogs that he summons. That's very frog-like. And then, you know, you beat him. And after you beat this frog, you get to transform into a frog in the game, which is kind of cool. That's a thumbs up frog. That's a good frog. That's almost a great frog. Actually, you know what? That is a great frog. That's a good frog. That's a frog we like. All right. Coming up next, we got Anzu from Poppin' Music. And I know absolutely nothing about this game. I tried to look it up. It's not a very popular game. You know what? So, it's a playable character, whatever that means. They're playable. You know what? They look pretty cool. Thumbs up. That's a good frog. Oh, did these go alphabetical? They did go alphabetical. Okay, we'll do alphabetical. Fuck it. That works. All right, next we got a tool from Spiritfarer. For those of you who don't know what the fuck Spiritfarer is, I was similar. It's a game very similar. If you ever played that old iPhone game, the Skyscraper Manager game, it's also kind of like Fallout Shelter, where you build a big old boat with like houses and shit. And a tool is one of the spirits that can move in, and he's actually got some decent lore. He's a big old homie. He's a super nice dude. He just kind of misses his family, you know. He constantly talks about how he wishes he could help his family, but he can't. And when he shows up on your boat, he summons thunderstorms, and that's badass. That is a for sure thumbs up frog. That's a good frog. Coming up next, one of the most sickest frogs to ever do it. The Battle Block Theater frog. Look at this guy. He's got a little top hat. He's got a little tie. That's a goat. When you use this frog, he runs for a little bit and then he explodes. He's a suicide bomber. He's for the cause. And you know what? That's badass. And you can also use him as a platform to jump higher in a platforming game. That's an S tier frog. If you want to hit S tier, that's the standards you got to live up to. Next frog. He also does climb up walls when he's running. Next frog. It's the fucking Battletoad. I should also clarify, I am not differentiating frogs and toads. That's too much work. If it looks like a frog or it says it's a frog, it's a frog. Battletoad's S tier. It's a Battletoad. What do you want from me? It's a Battletoad. That's an S tier. What else can you say? That's an S tier. Coming up next. I have not beaten Battletoads. I'll admit that. I also have only played it like twice and I haven't played it since I was like 13. But coming up next is Beelzebuffo. It's from Ark Survival Evolved, the dinosaur game. And it's one of the things, it can jump kind of high. It's got the second highest jump in the game. It's pretty cool. You find it in swamps. You can ride it. It swims pretty good. It makes cement paste. Unfortunately, why is there a frog in my dinosaur game? Why would you have a frog when you could have a dinosaur that does everything better than the frog? You know? He's just... You know? You just... Where's my info on this next guy? Give me... Do I not write it down? There it is. It's not in alphabetical order. Coming up next, the Blaphibian Angler from Yooka-Laylee appears in Galleon Galaxy, which is the last level in the game, and he just kind of makes you do a mini game that you expect to be kind of hype, because most of the mini games in like the old Banjo games that, you know, Yooka-Laylee was a spiritual successor to, kind of hype. You know, a lot of the mini games, and Banjo Tooie especially, had some great fucking mini games. Unfortunately, this guy's mini game kind of sucks. It really sucks. It's not fun. It just, there's some shooting stars fall, and you have to tongue them with your tongue because you're playing a chameleon, and you do that regularly throughout the game to every enemy. So it's really just not interesting. It's not cool, isn't it? Who cares? You know. He also kind of looks stupid. Not the coolest looking frog. Is what it is. Coming up next, Brog from Xenoblade Chronicles. That's a disgrace. That doesn't even look at that. That doesn't even look like a frog. That's not a frog. That looks nothing like a frog. Also, he's just a basic enemy, doesn't really do anything, and it's from Xenoblade, and I don't know why. The wiki page says it's a frog. That's a bad frog. No one wants that frog in their game. I don't want that frog. He's doing his best, but also, I don't want to play Xenoblade, so that's also, like, being in Xenoblade just brings it down, because, like, Xenoblade fans, you know? Not worth it. Alright, next up, we got the Bullfrog from Inscription. Inscription, actually, pretty interesting game. It's like a card deck battler game. The Bullfrog is one of the earliest cards you can get. It's able to attack flying enemies, which is its ability because it can jump high. And it's got pretty low attack, pretty low defense. It's a frog. At least it's a frog. It just kind of exists, you know? Coming up next is one of the Red Dead Redemption 2 frogs. This is the Bullfrog from Red Dead Redemption 2. And, it's a frog, you know? I'm gonna rank the Toad from Red Dead 2 at the same time. They just kind of exist. The only reason they exist is because the only reason they make the list and they exist is because there's an achievement for finding every animal and skinning every animal. They just exist, you know. They're just there to pad the game. I don't know. They exist. They're just kind of there. They don't really add anything to the game. I think the game wouldn't hurt without them. I think they're fine to exist, though. There's nothing wrong. They definitely look like frogs. And then we got the Animal Crossing Villager Frog. This is an entire race of characters that could show up. The picture shows the camo frog because it's a camouflage frog. And it's extremely similar to every other Animal Crossing villager. It's just kind of exists, you know? It's a race of characters. It's not an S-tier frog. It's not an S-tier frog. There's no shot. It's a thumbs up frog, you know? They don't really do anything. Like, they're just a villager. There's a ton of them. They're not really different from any other one. They just kind of exist, you know? They're just there. They're just frogs. There's a ton of them. They're all the same. No. I just don't care about Animal Crossing, I'll be real. Frog. Next up. A controversial opinion of mine. We got the frog from Chrono Trigger. The frog from Chrono Trigger is a knight who was cursed after he failed to defend his king and transformed into a frog. He's the last party member that you get in Chrono Trigger, and he's a water magic user. You know, very, very frog-like. He's a big homie. He's at least an A tier. You know what? He could be an S tier. But I think, personally, I think he's kind of a flat character. I don't think he's got a lot of depth to him, you know? He's not that cool looking. He's pretty cool. He's good. He's a great frog. Don't get me wrong. But he's just kind of the classic super loyal knight trope. Except he got turned into a frog. That's pretty good. But that's not an S tier in my book. I don't look at him and go, that's one of the frogs of all time. But, actually, you know what? These aren't the goats. They're the froats. The frogs of all time. That looks stupid, but fuck it. We're leaving it. Alright. This is a pretty niche game that I think more people should play. Because, it's actually kind of hype. This is Earth Defense Force's colonists. They're an alien race, and despite what they look like, while they are humanoid, they are the size of buildings. And they are trying to colonize Earth and kill all the humans. And they have giant bugs as pets. And they use the giant bugs to attack Earth. And you know what? That's really hype. Unfortunately, there's not really any individual characteristics of any of them. I didn't really want to count like the general or anything because they're not that interesting individually. But as a group, they're pretty hype. That's we like having those. Those are good. Next up, the Crash Bandicoot frogs. They kind of just exist. They're basic enemies. They hop around. If you attack them, they die. If you get hit by them, you die. It's a frog. It's the best, at least, they're frog in my book. It looks a lot like a frog. That's definitely a frog. Just kind of can't complain. It's pretty cool. Every game needs basic enemies, and as far as basic enemies go, frogs work pretty good. Next up is a pair I'm going to rank together, but not place next to each other, just rank together. And that is Croaker and Toader from Shovel Knight. They're side characters that you can walk into. They're part of the Battletoads crossover event with Shovel Knight, which is also pretty hype. So this is Croaker. He's got a sick sweater, and he loves puns. He just wants to tell you his puns, and then he just wants to make your day better by telling you his puns. That's kind of awesome. Now on the other hand, Toader, which is his buddy, he's just a grumpy guy. But you know what? You kind of like the back and forth of, you know, Croaker, who just wants to tell you puns, and Toader, who gets really mad when you tell him puns. That's a good dichotomy, and you need both for one to be so good. And that's just all it is. Yep. Alright. Next up, we got Crogungus from 8K Solotl, which is a roguelike game where you're an axolotl with an AK. I mean, you can try, but I'm the expert on frogs here. Do you got the frog sweater? Did you get... You can try and convince me to overrule something. I didn't even... Power World wasn't out when I was making this, alright? I don't have the Power World frog if there's a Power World frog. I've never seen it. I might add it. Krogungus it's just a basic enemy from AK Solotl. There's also 2 other frog basic enemies. I would just say it's at least it's a frog. But you know what? It's a pretty good frog. Its name is Krogungus. That's a good name. It's not just frog. It's Krogungus. We like that. I'm a fan. All right. Next up, we got the Maple Story Frog, which is known as the Cursed Frog. And if you look at it, that's a good-looking frog. That is a frog that I am a fan of the vibes of. And it is just a basic enemy in Maple Story. Not much to say, but it looks great. And that's hype. Alright, next up we got one of the most unique frogs on the list. Once again, I got a clip to show. I got the Dark Souls 2 Demon of Song boss fight. And if you look at this, that doesn't look like a frog. That's kind of creepy. But, so, the Demon of Song, pretty hype. I never played Dark Souls. This is pretty hype. It is a frog demon that keeps a corpse in his mouth. And as you can see, when he closes his mouth, it looks a lot like a frog. It's one of the easier boss fights in Dark Souls 2. But it's also one of the earlier boss fights, which is pretty cool. And that's a frog. That's sick. I love that this guy exists. That's a great frog. That's using frog in a way that not many other had considered. There's no other frog with a corpse in its mouth. And that's pretty unique. And you know what? We like unique. And just skipping to the end here. Defeats the frog. It's a good frog. That's a great frog. Can't complain. I think I saw this one walk out of the BLTs. Me too. You're so real for that. All right. Next up, controversial frog is Dennis from Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. So Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is a it's not old school. It's relatively new, but it's like trying to emulate the old school platformer collecting like the Spyro type games. It's trying to emulate those. And one of the characters that you have to help is Ty the Tasmanian is Dennis. And so first things first, you got to escort him to his home. He asks you. He's got a thick British accent because he's a rich snob. All right, this guy is a nepotism baby. All right, this guy has a ton of thunder eggs, whatever the fuck those are, and sells them for a lot of money. And because of his riches in the third Ty the Tasmanian Tiger game, he becomes a general in the war versus the Quin Can. Entirely based on nepotism and his riches. That's fucked up. That's a disgrace. Eat the rich. Eat the rich. All right. Coming up next, one of my personal sleeper favorite games, Awesome Knots. This is Dizzy. Dizzy got some sick lore, and also a absolutely insane character theme song. So, the character theme songs in this game are insane. So Dizzy's lore. She's an Aqua Fu master, capable of creating clones of herself, entirely using water. Unfortunately, she became an intergalactic music star, using these water clones as backup dancers. you know? Unfortunately, at one point in her career, they did a poll and found that one of her backup water clone dancers was more popular than her. So she got kicked out of her own band for water clones. That made her mad. So she became an intergalactic bounty hunter to get back and make money using her aqua fu. That's pretty hype. That's lore. That's some sick lore. She's also the cousin of one of the characters we're gonna rank later. What kind of game has fucking theme songs like this? This is a video game song. Which obviously it's not like that good, but like that's kind of hype. That's hype. That's a great frog. That's a great frog. Almost a frog of all time, but not quite. We got the music back. All right. Next up, we got one of the Don't Starve frogs. Just the default frog from Don't Starve. It spawns in swamps. And it's one of the hostile creatures in the game. It's not a neutral creature like many frogs. It'll attack you with its tongue, and if it hits you, you lose one of the items from your inventory. It just drops on the ground. That's an interesting mechanic. That's a good frog. That's definitely a good frog. They're pretty cool. They just drop monster meat. They don't have any interesting drops on their own, but they are an interesting thing to exist in the Don't Starve world. Next up, we got Drumstick the Chicken when he is magically turned into a frog from Diddy Kong Racing. So originally, this was going to be one of the types of frogs that I didn't include because I didn't think they were important. But I forgot about the character unlock method that's used the frog. So in Diddy Kong Racing, there's just a pack of frogs in the story mode that they're just kind of near a lake and they're just completely... They're just there, their background. However, if you finish all the mini games and you get all of the medals for all the mini games in the story mode, one of those frogs gets the chicken head. And if you hit that frog with your car, you unlock Drumstick the character. So that became a mechanic, and that made these frogs important. Still, it's a frog, you know? It doesn't really do much other than that. Just kind of exists. Can't really complain. Next up, we got the Everhood Frog, which is just frog. Kind of lame that they named him Frog, but Everhood is a fairly sick game. Everhood is a Guitar Hero style game that has characters that you battle against, and the frog is one of the introduction characters. So it's kind of hype. So just getting to the boss fight, you talk to the frog, and then you have this crazy shit going on, which is like, I was originally going to rank this guy pretty low, and then I watched the gameplay. I was like, actually, this is kind of sick. This is really sick. Like, I read that it was just a Guitar Hero game, and it's like, kind of is, but like, not really. And like, this is kind of sick. That's a great frog, for sure. That is the kind of frog we like to see. Want more of this kind of frog and less of these kind of frogs, you know? Coming up next, we got the inflatable frogs from Fall Guys. And everyone asking, oh, you got this frog? I got the inflatable frogs from Fall Guys. Yes, I got your frog. I promise you. So the Fall Guys frogs, They appear in many popular minigames, such as the iconic Lily Pad Leapers. And they just kind of expand and knock you off. And honestly, that's a good frog. It expands. It's a cool obstacle. It comes in Lily Pad Leapers, which is by far the best game in Fall Guys. It's a good frog. Next up, the Fallout 76 frog is a disgrace. Mutation and radiation did not do this frog any favors. You know, they're non-hostile. They got that going for them. But, holy shit, is this frog ever ugly. Look at that. That's a frog. That's supposed to be a frog. This is supposed to be a frog. No. Get out of here. That's a bad frog. We don't like them. We want them gone. We want better frogs. We deserve better frogs. We deserve better frogs than that, for sure. Next up, we got Flibbit from Banjo-Kazooie. In Bubble Gloop Swamp, you go to a certain area, and a bunch of these guys attack you, and you kill them all, you get a Jingy. It's pretty simple. It's one of the earliest basic Jiggies in the game. It's a frog. It's a pretty basic enemy. Doesn't really do anything. It hops at you. That's very frog-like. Can't complain. Flipnote Frog. Absolutely not S tier. All this frog does is exist. It gives you the tutorial, and then it's there. You know what? Clout, big fan of the Flipnote Frog. Honestly though, it's the only orange frog on the list. It's a pretty unique frog. It's not just a frog, so you know what? Gives a thumbs up from me. I'm okay with more Flipnote frogs. Next up, a frog I wasn't going to include because I fucking hate this game. But, if I'm including every frog, I gotta have this guy. The Fortnite Frog. So, this frog supposedly drops stink sacks, which you can use to make a primal bow, which shoots stink bomb arrows. And it was released in Chapter 2, Season 6 of Fortnite. And it looks goofy as fuck. But you know what? That's a good frog. He drops meat? That's not what the wiki page says. But, sure. I'll trust you guys. It also drops comically large meat. I don't play Fortnite. You know? Next up, for those of you who don't know, this is a sick frog. So this is Fred from Blaster Master. Despite, you know, the hard ability to scale these characters, this frog is giant. Much larger than a human being. He's the main character of Blaster Master's pet, and he's the catalyst for the whole Blaster Master series, is when his frog becomes giant and goes to hell. And this frog gets sent to hell multiple times, and every time decides, yeah, I'd rather not be here, and escapes. And that's badass. Like, that's sick. We love that. That's beast. Fred is an S tier frog. He is one of the frogs of all time, for sure. Escaping hell multiple times just so that you can fuck up some shit, that's sick. The Demon Frog from Diablo 2 is a basic enemy. It spits poison projectiles. You fight it very early game. There's a couple variations of it. It's a basic enemy in an RPG game. You just kind of right-click it and it dies eventually. You know? It's a frog. It's just a frog. Next up, we got the Frog Detective. Lily's gonna hate me for this one because this is just a frog. You know? It doesn't really have that much going for him. He's just a frog who's a detective. Actually, no, it's that. Yeah, nah. He's either B or C. Yeah, you know what? He's not just a frog. He's a detective, so he can be B tier. All right. He does have a magnifying glass. He doesn't have opposable thumbs though. I don't know how he's holding it. You know what? It's a frog detective. Next up, Legs told me she'd kill me if I didn't have this. I don't even think she's here. But I got Frog Feast. And I got a clip to show what the fuck Frog Feast is. This is an old ass game. It is like an old ass game. It is a 2-player game where you're a frog on a lily pad. And some flies fly by. And you gotta jump and grab them. And that's the whole game. This is it. This is the whole game. But you know what? We gotta respect our elders. I have no idea when this game came out. But you know what? I bet it was like the same time as like Donkey Kong. And you know what? There's a world where instead of playing Mario, we're playing Frog Feast Odyssey. It's not this world, but it's out there. It's 2005? This game, 2005? Why are you the way that you are? Okay, I assumed this game was way older. If this game was like 80s or early 90s, it's like an A tier. Yeah, I couldn't find it on Google. There's another thing, like, when I Googled Super Frog, who's coming up later, it's hard to find shit on Google for frogs that old. Alright, next up. Pause the music again. It's another clip that I got. We got Rhythm Heaven's Frog Hop. What the? Which is a DS, a rhythm game, where you just kind of you go along to the rhythm, and there's just frogs dancing. And you know what? It's okay. Not my type of game, but I'm glad it exists. And you know what? Just for that, I'm glad it exists. Not my thing, but you know what? Thumbs up. Coming up next, frog none of you have heard of. This is the GOAT. This is the GOAT. This is the best frog in gaming ever. Controversial, whatever. This is the single greatest frog. This is the Frog King from Loop Hero. For those of you who don't know, Loop Hero is a roguelike kind of game. You get a party and they get stronger as you go, and then, you know, when they all die, you start all over. So the Frog King is a secret boss fight that appears in the swamp with a very low odds of happening. And when he does arrive, he kills every other enemy monster on the field. And he does not attack you. He has no intention of dealing any harm to the player. He has 99% evasion and 2 HP. However, his ability makes it so that every hit that hits him only does 1 damage. So he is simply there to waste your time. And the whole time, instead of doing attacks, he simply speaks in gibberish. There are other characters in the game that speak real words, and he just types in moon runes and sends you messages in moon runes. And that's so sick. When he finally dies, he drops a "Change the world, my final message, goodbye," which is a dated meme. However, when the game came out, it was kind of hot. This is the GOAT. He also looks fantastic. Look at this guy. He's got a Chad frog chin. He's got a crown. He's beefy. That's an S tier frog. Unequivocally, GOAT frog. Coming up next, Frog Mario. One of the worst Mario suits. All it does, it makes you swim a little better. No one likes swimming levels. They all suck. And when they're good, you don't get a frog suit. It's also just a guy in a frog suit. I'm not on this list. I'm a guy in a frog suit. Fucked up. Why are you the way that you are? Mario sucks. There are better frogs in Mario games. Frog on Mario sucks. Frog in a Mario suit? Awful. Why? They should have picked a better suit. Because he doesn't even jump higher. He just swims better. Bad frog. We got the Frog Prince or Princess from RuneScape. Now, this frog is a random event that appears and asks you, and it tells you, like, hey, I'm a prince/princess that was turned into a frog. It's gender dependent based on the character that you picked when you created the game or created your character. So if you play as a girl, it's a frog prince. You play as a boy, it's a frog princess. It's 2024. Come on, RuneScape. Come on. Also, jokes aside, it doesn't really do anything. It's one of the random events that you kind of don't like seeing. You get it once, and when you've completed it, you're able to get a frog mask or hat or something, because you get a frog token that you can trade in. But then every time after that you get it, it just doesn't do anything. Yeah, but you can only get stuff with the frog tokens one time. There's only one thing to get. Which is it's one of the random events. You'd much rather get the genie. You'd much rather get the demon event. You'd much rather get so many other random events. You don't want this random event to happen. This random event, it just doesn't do anything. The frog mask is Pog, but you get the frog mask within your first couple days of playing. Whatever. You're just wrong. You're just wrong. This is not one of the frogs of all time. It's a frog, but it's also they should just let it rock. I think they should just let it rock and make the gender random every time the event pops up, and you got to deal with that as a player. You want the frog token? You might have to be a dude kissing a dude. Deal with it. Next up, from Dark Souls 1, the Frog Ray, which are just a basic enemy that You sure? Wikipedia says it's in Dark Souls 1. It's in the Dark Root Garden. Inky having a stroke on his keyboard over there. Speaking of, it's not a great frog. It's barely a frog. You know, it's a frog in name only. It kind of looks like a frog, but it more or less it's not a frog. It's a frog, but kind of not. Frog fractions. That's a great frog. It teaches you fractions while gaming. Frog fractions is hype. We like frog fractions. Claps in chat for frog fractions. Type 1 in chat if you played frog fractions as a kid. Because I know you did. Holy shit. I'm not even halfway through. Alright. Coming from Starbound, which is the Terraria clone that nobody played. Thumbs up. We got the frogs with 2 G's. Which are a neutral race that you can find in swamps and on swamp planets. They have merchants you can trade with. However, unlike most of the neutrals and merchants, at no point do these creatures and characters become immune to the player's attacks, so you can accidentally kill them at any point. They have 1 HP. They just kind of die. It's a frog and a fez. That's kind of awesome. Unfortunately, they just kind of die. And why do they exist like that? Why are you in a game that already is hard to play because it's not that... It's kind of a clone of a game that's just better than it. And then also be so fragile. Be a little thicker. I know frogs are like gonna all die in real life because they're fucking fragile. But like, come on. Frogger. We all know Frogger is an S tier. Everyone's played Frogger or a Frogger clone at some point in their life. This is one of the OGs. It's one of the originals. It is a classic. You got a top-down view, and you gotta cross the road and not get hit by cars, or you gotta cross the lake and not fall in the water. A little confusing. Frogs can swim. Still an S tier. Straight up, you gotta respect the work that Frogger put in. All right, Frogget, Undertale. It's an Undertale character. I don't like Undertale. However, it's a basic enemy from Undertale. It's one of the first things that you fight. There's some of them that are NPCs. There's some of them that are characters. It's a frog. You can tell it's a frog just from looking at it. So, you know what? It's a frog. Froglet from Castle Crashers. Now this guy looks sick. Unfortunately, he doesn't do shit all. This is one of the worst pets in the game. All he does is grab food for you with his tongue. However, there is a giant one next to the blacksmith in the game that allows you to choose what weapon you use. And that is awesome because you go into its mouth and it has every single weapon in the game that you've found so far. And that's awesome. We like that. You find this frog by digging him up in a graveyard, which is like, okay. I'm glad he exists. It's not that great, but I'm glad he exists. Next up, we got Big the Cat's best friend. And I love me some Big the Cat. Big the Cat, one of the best characters in Sonic. Straight up. Undeniably. So Froggy in Sonic Adventure accidentally swallows a piece of a Chaos Emerald and becomes corrupted evil bad guy. And you spend the whole time trying to take him down and save him from the corruption of the Chaos Emerald. Whatever that means. According to the wiki, despite being Big the Cat's best friend, he is constantly running away from Big the Cat and causing problems, which keeps him out of the S tier. Why is he such a problematic frog? Why has he got to do that? Alright. We gotta pause the Isaac music for the next. This is one of my goats. One of the OG 4 characters in Awesome Knots. Froggy G. Straight up, one of the goats, for sure. So his full name is Nate Frog with 2 G's. He grew up in a bad part of the planet he grew up on, in the hood. He got involved in multiple gang fights, which are referred to as swim shootouts. That's kind of hype. And he participated in his first swim shootout when he was still a tadpole. That's hype. Unfortunately, due to this bad upbringing, he was arrested during a gang war with toads. And yeah, it's a pretty short theme song. He was arrested in a gang war. And because of this, he decided, you know what? In prison, he was going to learn how to become a street rapper. Unfortunately, that was not profitable for him at all. That failed completely. Instead, he decides he needs to get his mom out the hood. When he makes it, he would not leave his moms in the hood. He respects his mom. And so he joins the Awesome Knots, which is an intergalactic bounty hunter group, to make money and get his mom out of the hood. And you know what? That's so fire. That's one of the frogs of all time. That guy's awesome. We love Froggy G in this household. Froggy G, that's one of the frogs of all time. Next up, we got the Cube World frog. Cube World game, super hyped up. Developer dropped it, kind of stopped working on it. 5 years later, comes back, drops an update that is the worst update ever put out for a game ever. It was so bad. However, it's pretty good. That's a good looking frog. That's a good looking frog race. You know, I can't complain. That's a good looking frog. It's not a great because it's just a playable character, doesn't really do anything. It's an adventure attack game RPG kind of thing. Yeah, can't complain. It's pretty good. All right, Frog Fuchsius, coming from Super Mario RPG. Look at this guy. He's got a sage beard. He's a wise sage. Where do we think he goes? Obviously A tier. This guy is so sick. He adopted Malo, who's like this little cloud dude. You know the clouds the Lakitu rides on? He's one of those. But he's like got personality and shit. And unfortunately, sometimes you have some non-banger frogs, and that's okay. Because you need the non-bangers to appreciate the bangers. But Frog Fuchsius, sick dude. Wise Toad Sage of Super Mario RPG. We love the guy. Good guy. Alright, next up. Frog most people probably forgot or didn't know was a frog, even though it's called a Frogzard. This is from Adventure Quest Worlds, Dragon Fable, fucking whatever the fuck those games you want to call them. All of them. It's barely a frog. It's not a frog. I don't know why it's called a frog. It's just not. There are iconic enemy. Not a good frog. Just not a good frog. All right. Next up, we got Gribbit, but with no vowels, because that's how it's spelled. Don't know why. From Divinity Original Sin 2. They are not actually frogs. They just look like frogs. They are a familiar of the witch used to defend her house. And you know what? That's kind of cool lore, but it's still just a frog. It's just a frog. And it doesn't really do much. It's just a classic RPG enemy. You attack it early game, It fights back. You know? They need to exist. Glad they exist. Can't complain. Can't complain. Someone asked earlier about it. The Pokemon frogs. Yes, I got the Pokemon frogs. Greninja. Much as I hate to admit it, Greninja's a really good frog. Greninja has cemented itself as iconic. Somehow, despite being a Gen 6 starter, it's probably the second most popular starter of all time. It's top 5 most popular Pokemon. It is one of the GOATs for sure. It is incredible. Ash Greninja's cool. Its typing's cool. Its ability is cool. It's a frog ninja. It's just cool. Greninja's just cool. Can't complain. Greninja's just cool. It's just a good Pokemon. It's just one of the best Pokemon they released after Gen 5. Straight up, there's like 10 of them maybe that are good. Greninja's one of them. Coming up next, World of Warcraft's Gulp Frog. Just kind of an enemy. He's got a big old throat. He gulps. He's a frog. I never played World of Warcraft. I don't think they're that interesting. His drop table, I tried to look at his as the drop table to see anything interesting, and it drops like 60 things, which turns out that like everything in WoW drops like 60 things. It's a frog. Can't complain. It's a basic enemy. You need those. Glad it exists. Can't complain. It's not amazing though. Oh my god, it's Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's. Happy Frog. One of the least important characters in the entire Five Nights at Freddy's. FNAF lore. For those of you who have not watched FNAF lore, which is probably most of you, because holy fuck, why? Happy Frog is one of the mediocre melodies, which are a fake group of characters that only exist in the Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator that you can purchase and put on your stage to simulate your pizzeria. And then appears again in the Ultimate Custom Night game as one of the characters who attacks you from the vent. However, it is probably the hardest character in the game to die to unintentionally. I don't know if anyone's ever done it. It always follows the sound lure that you put out with no delay, and it will just go to wherever your sound lure is. So if you ever at any point put out a sound lure, this character just will not kill you. So it's one of the hardest characters to get to actually jump scare you. That being said, she's pretty cool. They needed variation in their animatronics, and that's cool. That's cool with me. That's a good frog. Also, one of the few frogs on this list that's a girl. I don't know why so many are guys. Almost all the ones who are characters are guys. There's like 4 that are girls, so thumbs up for her. Next up, Hopper from Jak and Daxter. It's just a basic enemy, you know. It looks like a frog. You can tell that's supposed to be a frog. See, you say that, but I'll have you know, bitches be loving frogs. I am bitches, but like, girls love frogs. I don't get it. Because I mean, I like frogs, but I don't. There's so many, like, if you want to find out if someone you're talking to is bisexual, if you ask them what they think about frogs and they're a big fan of frogs, significantly higher odds. I promise you. It's a crazy phenomenon. I'm like 80-90% asking this question. It's crazy. They don't like frogs that much? Probably straight. They love frogs? Probably not. Next up. It's just, women love frogs, man. I don't know why. Can't tell you. Frogs pull. The frog onesie, you go downtown in the frog onesie on Halloween, that pulls. It kills. It kills it. All right. Horny toad. Yes, the horny toad. While I'm talking about like this. It from Ratchet and Clank. It's a basic enemy. It jumps at you and you shoot it. Good segue, right? Great segue. It's a frog. I don't really have much to say about it. It's just a frog. Next up, we got the hot-footed frog from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and also the other one that no one played. Surprisingly, when I asked people to send me frogs, not a single person sent me this one. I found this frog because when I was looking at them, I went to the best-selling games of all time list, and I went through all of them and checked if they had frogs. And then I got to Breath of the Wild, and I was like, wait, no, that definitely had the hot footer, that had frogs in it. And no one reminded me to put this frog in here. So it's an entirely unmemorable frog. That being said, it's a frog. When you cook it into meals, it increases your movement speed, which is pretty useful. But catching them, pretty annoying. We're just gonna put that there. Those who know. Those who don't worry about it. Next up, this is Jerry the Frog from Webkinz. No, I don't have a fursona, and I don't want to fuck frogs. There's not a single frog on this list that I would fuck. Jerry the Frog from Webkinz. So, the lore of Jerry. Jerry was intended to be a special character and a super salesman. He was intended for a feature that was unreleased and never ended up coming out. So he ended up only appearing as a cameo character during certain events, such as the pet competition as a judge. Yeah, he's okay. He's a frog in a suit. He's a salesman. He's got a top hat. He's no Artifact, you know. Artifact was the single greatest character in Webkinz. You can't beat the iconic speech of, "Looks like you found a gem. Would you like to add that to your collection and go for the rare Crown of Wonder? Or I can buy it from you if you like." That guy's the GOAT. And because this guy is not as good as him, he can't be the GOAT. But he's pretty good. He's a thumbs up frog. He's a thumbs up frog. Can't complain. Can't complain. Next up, one of my favorite frogs. And by favorite frogs, I mean favorite games. However, we gotta put some respect on Jolly Roger's name. Jolly Roger owns a whole town known as Jolly Roger's Lagoon. And in that town, he is a barkeep. And he absolutely loves his girlfriend. And you know what? You gotta respect that. I have no idea how to Twitch Prime on mobile. So when you meet Jolly Roger, he does two things in the game. He asks you to save his girlfriend, who went missing, and he offers to sell you a room for 2 doubloons, which are something you have to collect. However, you can also just rob him blind and blow up the door to the room, and then he lets you have it for free, which is kind of hype. He's one of the playable characters in the Banjo Pilot game, which is a spin-off of Diddy Kong Racing where just planes. And he also sells jiggies in the Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts game for, I don't know. I actually don't know what he sells for. I've never played that game. It sucks. Hidden lore. The bar that he operates is very likely to be a gay bar. He sells some crazy drinks like the Seaman's Surprise, which is actually, let me just Google this. He sells Toad in the Hole, Seaman Surprise, and Salty Dumplings. He also is just a flamboyant guy. And for that, well, not for that, for everything involved, he's an A-tier frog. He's a great frog. He just loves his girlfriend, and he's confident. He sells Seaman Surprise. He owns a bar. A whole town is named after him. It's a good guy. That's a hype frog. All right. Next up, we got... Yep, you're right, Petra. You're right. He's not S tier because of the way he talks. I can't... He doesn't really do enough to be S tier. He's also a capitalist, and we don't like that. Alright, next up, we got Keroppi from Hello Kitty. And she appears in Hello Kitty games. I don't know, there's a lot of Hello Kitty games. I don't know. Looks pretty cute though. I've never played a Hello Kitty game. I'll be real. I don't know if she's got great lore or she got great shit. Petra's a big fan. Hello Kitty is like the second most profitable IP of all time, so you know what? Fine. Maybe she's a great frog. Unfortunately, Petra, I am so not afraid of your actionable threats. You'd have to get legs to threaten me, and then I would be afraid. Alright. Next up, annoying collectible item, the Kerotans from Metal Gear Solid. I mean, they're frogs. They're annoying little collectible. You've got in every level, starting with Metal Gear Solid 3, and every Metal Gear Solid game after that. There's just one of these in every level, except one level randomly, according to the wiki. You shoot them to collect them. They're just kind of a collectible. Honestly, actually, they don't just kind of exist. They're an interesting little collectible. They're cool enough. Can't really complain. You have such a low bar for S tier. It's crazy. This is not as good as a Battletoad. You guys are crazy. Next up, we got Quolock from Ori and the... It's not the first Ori game. It's the second one. I don't know what it's called. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, I think. Because the first one is Blind Forest. Oh, for Keroppi? Sure. You know what? Honestly, I know so little. I'll allow it. Lowest ranked S tier, but she can be S tier. Hello Kitty is a fucking domineer of... Yo, what's up? What's up, Luke? Hello Kitty is a complete domination of pop culture world. It's crazy how it's almost as profitable as Pokemon. Like, that's just insane. Quolock from Ori is the guardian of the marsh and a wise toad, just like Frogfucius. However, compare them head to head, they're the same character, but one of them looks way sicker. So he will instead be a thumbs up. If they gave him a crazy sage beard, maybe higher than B tier. Unfortunately, they did not give him a crazy sage beard. Uh-oh. I'm gonna run out of music. Oh well. We'll figure it out. Next up, Lady Frog Arcade is just a Frogger clone. So I didn't know what it was. I had to Google it. It's basically the Mrs. Pac-Man of Frogger. Except it's worse. Whereas Mrs. Pac-Man improved on Pac-Man, Lady Frog did not. It's just kind of worse Frogger. And, we don't like clones. That's lazy, that's boring. Frogger's the GOAT. Be better. Leaping the Frog from Chained Echoes. I'd never heard of this game. Someone sent this frog to me. It doesn't even look like a frog. It's a basic enemy. You can find no information on this game at all on the internet. It's apparently really old. It just that don't look like a frog to me. It can go above Ice Frog though. Next up, we got Lickatoad, or Langston Lickatoad. Being specific, is a species that you can farm in the Viva Pinata game in your garden. However, the main character of all of Viva Pinata is Langston Lickatoad, and he helps you send pinatas to a party, unknowingly knowing that he's going to get the shit beat out of those pinatas. And for that, Langston Lickatoad is pretty sick. I am a fan of Langston Lickatoad. That's a good guy. He's a cool guy. Lord Kairu from Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts, a game I could not give less of a shit about. And you know what? That's okay. So he's a Dream Eater. He's an optional boss fight. And despite the fact that he looks like a knight, he's actually like actual frog-sized. Which is kind of hype. See, if this was like a human-sized frog that you fought, I'd be like, that's kind of boring. But like, you play as a child in Kingdom Hearts, and this guy goes up to your knee. And that's kind of awesome. Purely based on sizing, that's sick. Everything else about the character, it looks kind of cool. Like, the design is kind of cool. But, everything else is kind of hit or miss. But he's good enough to be a great frog. Mary Maggie Malpass, which is the weirdest long full name I've ever seen. And, this is, Jolly Roger's girlfriend. She manages to get herself swallowed by a big fish. And you save her by simply opening the mouth of the big fish, and then she saves herself when you go talk to her. I don't know why she needed your help. I guess she needed your help. She really didn't, but oh well. She's fine. She's a character. Sure, thumbs up. It's a B tier. The Minecraft frog. Controversial. I hate the Minecraft frog. That shit looks dumb. It's one of the Minecraft mobs that got added way beyond the point where I stopped caring about Minecraft. It doesn't do anything. It's similar. It's one of the mobs that, like, most of the mobs in the early game Minecraft, they got pretty useful or unique things that are going on with them. All frogs do is they eat slimes, which is like whatever, and then they eat magma cubes. And when they eat a magma cube, they produce a frog light, which is just reskinned glowstone. So it's not even like it does anything unique. You gotta find them in a swamp, and you breed them with slime balls, which are extremely hard to get. However, having more shit in Minecraft, in a game like Minecraft, you can't really complain. So it'll be B tier. You can't really complain. It's like it's pretty decent. It's kind of annoying because when you're trying to make a living zoo, there's more shit you gotta get. But they're good enough. Good enough. Next up, we got Monster Boy Frog Form. This is what you unlock after you beat the ancient frog in Monster Boy. And it's the frog form for the main character. And he's able to use his tongue to connect to grappling hook things, and he swings from them. And that's kind of sick. And just for that, he gets B tier. The character himself, kind of lame. However, the mechanic, pretty cool. Other than that, no one's played this goddamn game, so who cares? Next up, we got a total dick, a doofus, an ignorant asshole. And you know what? We love villains here. This is Mr. Toad from The Wolf Among Us. If you open up his wiki page, it opens with, Toad is stupid, rude, stubborn, ignorant, insolent, impertinent, critical, talkative, incompetent, opprobrious, obstreperous. These are words I've never even fucking heard of. Immature, selfish, uncaring, and always profane. There's not a single good word to say about this guy. He initiates the start of the game when he contacts the main character, who's a detective, about a noise he hears. And he's just a bit of a dick. But you know what? You need dicks in games because they're easy to hate, and we love hating them. And for that, that's an easy A tier. I love a character to hate. I love having someone to hate. If a character is designed for you to hate them, it's great. Next up, we got Nemo from Neopets, which is one of the characters that you can, or one of the characters. It's one of the pets you can obtain and have, and it definitely looks like a frog. And Neopets is sick. He gets a B tier. Not much else to say. There's nothing really unique about any of the Neopets except for the way they look. And he looks alright. Can't complain. Next up, we got No-Ho-Ho-Ho. Yes, I said that right. No-Ho-Ho-Ho. He's from Puyo Puyo Tetris. He's got a couple unique abilities. He's able to shuffle 2 rows, which is like you got 2 rows, and it'll just shuffle them randomly. And he can also do a complete removal and swap of columns, which is cool. He's according to the lore, he's a traveling merchant frog, and he really likes curry, so much so that he smuggles it into countries illegally. And that's pretty sick. Also, look at him. He's adorable. That's an easy, great frog. That is a fantastic frog. Next up, a frog everybody knows. The frog from Super Mario Odyssey. And you know what? Unlike Frog Suit Mario, the frog from Mario Odyssey is pretty good. Is pretty good. Only thing keeping him out of S tier, there's absolutely no reason to use him. He's a very good looking frog. However, his only ability is he jumps higher, which is that's a frog ability. However, every situation where there are a frog and that you're supposed to use the frogs to get stuff, everything that they collect is both easier and faster to do without the frog, which is crazy. Except I think the moon jump, but like, no, when you're speedrunning Odyssey, you skip the frog. They skip the frog because it got the fucking huge cutscene. Yes, they don't use the frog in the speedrun. It is way easier, but in the speedrun, they don't use the frog. It's faster because the cutscene takes too long. The any percent world record skips the frog. No, they don't capture the frog. They don't capture the frog. I'm telling you. It's faster to not capture the frog. Regardless, it's just a thumbs up. It's pretty good. I know for a fact you can skip the frog, because I used to watch fucking CJ doing the fucking min caps. And you know what? Min caps is cooler than 90% anyways. I don't care. Odyssey's a bad game. Staying in B tier. Maybe he can be top of B tier. But are you telling me this frog is as good as any of these frogs? Because I don't think so. Slab, Karopi's in S tier. I don't think this frog is as good as Frog Fuchsia's. Straight up. Alright, next up, we got Ogdo Bogdo. And also, technically, combined into that is Spawn of Ogdo from the second Jedi Fallen Order game. This is from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's the first optional boss fight in the game on the first planet. And it's a big old frog. And you can cut his tongue off, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty fun boss fight. I got a clip of it. It's a pretty cool boss fight. This clip, unfortunately, is just this person using a bunch of endgame abilities shit to kill it really easily. But you know what? It's fine. It attacks like a frog. It's very much a frog. Like, there's no way this boss fight could be any more frog. It has teeth, but it's also an alien, so like that's fine. It's not fantastic, but it's good for sure. Also, next up, from Slay the Spire, which is crazy to me that I asked 3 people who play a ton of Slay the Spire if there's a frog in Slay the Spire. They said no. Turns out, there is. You Google Slay the Spire frog, you get the paper frog, which is one of the relics. And all it does is it makes your vulnerable statuses more effective. Whatever that means. That's not a frog. That's a paper frog. Paper frogs are pretty cool in real life. But like, it's a frog made of paper. Next up, mobile games. Crazy. We got Pocket Frogs, which is like Logan Paul's Crypto Zoo without any of the crypto. It's pretty hype. You breed frogs, you get more frogs, you get different kinds of frogs, you breed more frogs, you sell them, you buy more. It's pretty hype. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not like the greatest frogs of all time, but it's pretty good. Next up, I'm gonna rank all 3 at once because I finally got to one. The Super Auto Pets frogs, of which there are 3. First up, the frog from Super Auto Pets, which is this one, which is a tier 1, which is the earliest tier of creature you can get. It is a 3 power, 1 defense, and it swaps the stats of 2 adjacent pets, which, like, that you can use that. It's not the worst. The Poison Dart Frog, which is a tier 4, 5 power, 2 defense, which kills the friend that's in front of it, and then does damage to the highest health enemy, which is like, I think it's like 2 damage, 4 damage, 6 damage or something, which is like just a dog shit ability. It's so bad for a tier 4. There are other tier 4s who like do so much better shit. And if you build like a late game stacking build, one where you're ending up like increasing the power shit every game, and they're at like 50-50, 6 damage ain't gonna do shit. It's not doing anything. The Poison Dart Frog sucks in Super Auto Pets. The Toad, however, Toad's pretty good. Toad's a tier 3, it does 3/3, and whenever an enemy takes damage, they become weak, which makes them take twice as much damage the next time they take damage, which is pretty good. If you have something like the Pufferfish, you just fucking, everything on the other team takes damage, And then they're all weak for the whole battle. That's pretty good. Next up, Politoed. Look at that guy. Look at him. He's amazing. No notes. Look at him. He just... No notes. Absolutely no notes. That's an S tier. He just wants to clap. He's just a happy guy. He's just clapping. He's just clapping. He just wants to cheer you on. He's just a happy guy. He's just a happy guy. And he's clearly a frog. He's got a little swirly. Politoed is so sick. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard you say, Slab. Politoed is significantly stronger and more useful than Poliwrath. Its abilities are better. Its stats are better. It looks better. It's cooler. Its typing is better. Water fighting kind of sucks. Pure water is so much better than just water fighting. Like, look at it. He's just clapping. Yeah, Drizzle's really good. Drizzle made fucking Pelipper go from like bad to like overused. Like one of the best Pokemon in the game. You guys are crazy. Politoed is like by far my favorite Pokemon. And it's one of the best Pokemon ever released. You're crazy if you think otherwise. He's so sick. If you think otherwise, you are smoking crack. All right. Just moving some music so that we get, so I don't run out. Hopefully I don't run out, but whatever. Next up, we have, fuck, they're it's spelled super weird. Let me find what this thing's called. It's from Final Fantasy 14? 15? One of the Final Fantasy games. It's a Pirogo. Is a Pirogo from Final Fantasy 14. So initially a princess cast a spell to make these frogs evolve, which they eventually started to learn to walk, talk, and use magic, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, while they were, growing as a species, they tried to reach out to nearby settlements and, become friends. And the Taru race thought that was intimidating and attempted to genocide them. So there's very few that are left that are capable of walking, talking, and doing magic. But it's a wizard frog. It's a frog that's a wizard. That's awesome. Prince Froggy. Another frog that has a boss fight. Oh, I totally had this and forgot to get it earlier. Yeah, this is the Lord Kairu boss fight. Yeah, see, he's like ankle height. Like, I expected him to be big. He's tiny. That's awesome. All right, Prince Froggy from Yoshi's Island, the 5th boss of the game. So he's the only boss in the game that instead of, increasing the size, Kamek shrinks your size, and then he eats you, and you fight him from the inside. And that's really unique for the time. They never did anything like this before. It's a very Super Mario World boss fight, but it's pretty hype. I think it's a great boss fight. I think it's super unique for the time. I think it's designed well. I think he's cool. And can't complain. Next up, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Japanese name of this game or his name. This is the Prince of Sable. Is a main protagonist from a niche Japanese-only Game Boy game. He's got a frog form. He's got a snake form. He looks pretty cool. So supposedly he appears as an assist trophy in Smash 4 and Ultimate, and he's also a spirit in Ultimate. I play a lot of Smash. I don't play the new game, so I've never seen him. But that's pretty cool. That's thumbs up. That's cool. Immediately pausing the song again for some Parappa the Rapper. Next up, we got Prince Flea Swallow, who's like barely a frog. Looking at him, I'd think he's an iguana, but he's apparently a frog.
I'm working in the flea market so early. I've been working here since my mama was a baby. Just because the rhythm is slow, that don't mean that you can't flow. In the rain or in the snow, got the funky flow. In the rain or in the snow, got the funky flow. All you ever need is
And if you can't tell, he's supposed to be a Jamaican flea market salesman.
all you ever need is to be nice and friendly. Remember, strike it rich, the key is love. Save everybody from way up above. I can sell a bottle cap.
It's a great frog.
I can sell a bottle cap like this. I never dream it would be like this. I am the number one ruler of the seven seas. The skunk over here will bring you luck.
Alright, yep, that's enough. Next up, we got a Kirby boss fight. Pie Ribbit. From Kirby Triple Deluxe. Apparently this is a frog. It's a Kirby boss fight though, so it's unbelievably easy because Kirby has infinite jumps. Because why wouldn't? It's a volcano fire-breathing frog. It has a tongue attack, so I guess it's kind of a frog. But honestly, it's not really a frog. Barely feels like a frog. Not a big fan, but you know it's a frog, I guess, according to its wiki page. Next up, the other frog Neopet, Quiggle. It's not actually a frog. I don't know why it says it's a frog. Also, it reminds me of Quiggles, and if this is where his name came from, that's crazy. He don't look like a frog. He looks like an alien. I wouldn't call him a frog. And also, you can't put Quiggles anywhere but the very top or the very bottom of a tier list, and this guy don't belong at the top, so he goes to the bottom. That's all it is. Next up, one of my favorite games of all time, and the very first boss of the first game of the series. This is Sir Raleigh the Frog, my current Discord profile picture and Slippy name that no one gets. So this character got some crazy lore.
Obviously, we should have snuffed you out as well.
So
without further ado, let me...
he is able to eat flies and inflate himself just like a balloon and slam, which is kind of awesome. I mean, it's not very effective. You can very easily dodge it. He's not a very hard boss. He's the first boss of the game. However, his lore is sick. So Raleigh was born to rich and fortune. And you know what? He got sick of that. He didn't like the easy life. So what he did was he became a pirate. And he became really good at it. And in that time, he was recruited to the Fiendish Five, which are the main enemy force of the first game. And that enemy force kills your dad and steals your family heirloom. And you gotta take it back. However, after they kill your dad, they all split up and then come back. Which is, they split up. He goes to the Florian Triangle and creates a weather machine, which basically, in universe, he's the reason the Bermuda Triangle exists. Because he makes a storm machine, because it's easy to sink other ships and then steal their shit. And that's kind of hype. So despite the fact that he was born rich, he was like, this is kind of lame. I don't want it. And instead, he became rich again with purely his own merit. However, he's still a villain, which is kind of a bad thing. But we like villains. This is an S tier frog for me. I love this guy. He's got a big old top hat. He's got robotic genius. He's able to create a weather machine that controls storms. That's awesome. Next up, Rano from Rivals of Aether. Someone in here earlier asking, yo, you got the Rivals frog? Of course I got the Rivals frog. I'm going to check what this link is. Why? Why did I get this link? Whatever. Rano is the Sheik-like character from Rivals of Aether. Which, like, you know, that's fine. Local player who's top 10 in the world plays this character. They keep nerfing him. But honestly, he's actually one of the cooler characters in the game. Unfortunately, he's like no lore at all. But still, I think he's one of the more unique frogs on here. I think they make Poison Frog. They have a pretty good way of using Poison Frog. I don't know. He's pretty cool. I certainly cannot complain. Ribbit King. Once again, immediately pausing my music because this needs some context. Ribbit King is a game that's like playing golf by hitting a hammer onto a seesaw to launch a frog. And it's kind of crazy. Like, conceptually, how many drugs was the person who came up with this on? Like, that's crazy. Like, they just fucking slam these frogs to launch them distances to play golf. Like, that's kind of awesome. Like, that's just awesome. Next up, yet another boss fight. This is a Ribby and Croaks from Cuphead. One of the most visually unique frogs on the list. Everything Cuphead is so sick. One of the earliest boss fights in the game. It's two frogs. They're fighting you, and you gotta fight them. And you're collecting their soul for the devil, because that's what you do for everything in Cuphead. They got 3 phases. First phase, they're both on that side. Second phase, they split up and go both sides. And then it's a little harder. And then in their third phase, they become a slot machine. And gambling is awesome. And everyone should gamble. And for that, that's an A-tier frog. That's easily an A-tier frog. Next up, Mother 3 save frogs. They're just kind of the point where you save. They're little frogs. They're in little cars. They're pretty cute. I mean, can I really complain? No. So that's a B-tier frog. They're pretty cool. They're mainly from the Mother 3 save frogs. That's their main purpose. They might be in other things, but whatever. Next up, The Scribblenauts frog. It's a frog. If you don't know what Scribblenauts is, it's a game where you get puzzles, but you have a book that can create any object. And if you type frog in, this thing spawns, and it might solve the puzzle for you based on what you need. Sure. Seismitoad. The worst frog Pokemon by a lot. It's like it didn't evolve from the tadpole yet. It's lame. It's 4 times weak to grass. It dies immediately. There's like no reason you should ever use it over Swampert. Swampert's just a better version of this Pokemon. They do the same thing. He doesn't look cool. He just kind of sucks. Next up, the Ocarina of Time song frogs. Same shit. They're like part 3 of a 4-part fetch quest, which it just kind of sucks. They're a bunch of bad ones in a row. These guys just kind of suck. They're not interesting. They're not fun. We don't like them. Slippy Toad. Why the fuck are you called Slippy Toad when you're a frog? Why do you whine so much? Slippy Toad sucks. I hate Slippy. Project Slippy, great. Slippy Toad, the frog from Star Fox, sucks. In game, is the team's mechanic, but is super whiny. When you're alive, Slippy shows the boss health bar, which doesn't really matter because you're just gonna shoot it till it's dead anyway. So it doesn't actually help you, unlike the other 2 abilities from the other 2. He's kind of iconic, but like in the worst way, and where they weren't trying to make him miserably annoying, but he's miserably annoying. Also has a son who's equally miserably annoying in the future of one of the games. I don't remember. Slippy Toad sucks. I hate Slippy. Why is Slippy Toad a frog? I'd still rank if it was Slippy Toad the Toad, but nope. All right, frog from Spelunky. It's actually pretty good. Only because there are 2 kinds of frogs in Spelunky. There's the basic enemy frog, which would just be a C tier frog. It's just a frog. However, there's a small chance that every basic frog that spawns can spawn as a giant frog, which is one that's just like attached to the wall. That after you do a little bit of damage to you, its mouth opens and you can go inside and get like some treasure or reward or something. And before you kill it, it will spawn smaller frogs, which are kind of sick. The Goliath frogs are kind of sick. All right. Spyro the Dragon Frog. It's a frog. When you burn it with fire, a butterfly comes out, and then your dragonfly eats it, and that's how you gain health. That's all it does. They just kind of hop around. It's a frog, and it's how you increase your health. They're kind of like the health increase spots. Pretty cool. Stone Toads from Super Metroid. Completely neutral creature, except when Samus enters ball form. When you enter ball form, they try and eat you. If they eat you while you are in ball form, you can drop a bomb and explode them from the inside. That's awesome. That's needed. You have to do that to progress the game in some points, and that's sick. All right, next up, Super Frog, which is a super old game for the Amiga in 1993. And just for that, this is one of the OG goats of platforming. It's just a classic platformer game. What, Metroid? I said it's from Metroid. Whatever, same shit, different story, you know? It's a Metro, whatever. It's Metroid Prime, whatever. It's a thing. Next up, the Tadvolt from Shovel Knight. They're electricity frogs. They're one of the basic enemies. When they're zapping, if you land on them, you get shocked, which introduces one of the first enemies that you have to like time your attacks with in Shovel Knight. And it's a frog. It's not super interesting, but I'm glad it exists. I don't know why they gave the frog electricity, but they did. Next up, Tom Kench. One of the most iconic characters in League. He's the River King from Bilgewater. Also, just like a demon who just wants people to be the worst versions of themselves. In lore, there's a character once who really needs to borrow some money to spend on a girl. And he's never lied before. And Tom Kench is like, I'll give you the money. You just gotta lie. And then he slowly corrupts this person over time to the point where they can only lie. And then when they've entirely ruined their own life, they go out to sea and he eats them. That's awesome. He can commonly be found in casinos, gambling. That's badass. And as far as the game's concerned, he's just a beefy bruiser. He just wants to run in. He eats people. He eats teammates and hides them in his mouth to save them. He's just awesome. Tom Kench is awesome. Tom Kench is awesome. Next up, Terraria Frog. Terraria Frog is one of the critters in the game. It doesn't do anything. There's some critters in the game that have uses, like they can be used as fishing bait or something. The only thing you can do with a frog is you can put it in a terrarium. Wart from SMB2 might be a toad. I don't remember. But the Terraria Frog, B tier. C tier. It doesn't really do anything. The Emperor and aka Toad King. Once again, a boss fight from Hyper Light Drifter. Oh shit. It's just a boss fight. His lore is pretty cool. He's responsible for the Toad invasion that happened prior to the game starting. He's like the king of the toads. He's pretty cool looking. You know? He doesn't really have any lines or lore or anything for that B tier, but I'm glad he exists, you know? I can't super complain. Next up, yet again, another boss fight character. Mega Man, Toad Man. Short ass video, short ass boss fight. Is actually a robot who's kind of like a toad. He's an agricultural robot created by Dr. Cossack. He's forced to fight Mega Man because of Dr. Robotnik. And he's able to make it rain acid. That's pretty sick. Acid rain is pretty sick. That's a thumbs up from me. Even though he's actually a robot. And that's kind of lame. Next up, Toadonpa from Golden Sun. What the fuck is Golden Sun? And what is this guy? He doesn't look anything like a frog. I tried to Google anything about this guy, and he looks fucked up. He's a disgrace to frog kind. That is not a frog. He's the worst. That guy sucks. As far as lore is concerned, he's the pet of Dodonpa, who imagine naming your pet after yourself. That's such an ego problem. That's insane. All right, once again, another couple boss fights coming up. From The Witcher 3, we have the Toad Prince boss fight. It's from the Hearts of Stone DLC. It is the first boss fight of the DLC. It's just a big old frog / toad that you fight. And this clip isn't great because this person's using a bunch of stuff that makes your screen look fucked. But it's actually, they had to nerf this boss fight twice because people found it too hard. It's still probably the second hardest boss fight in the entire game, which is cool because this game is pretty easy. And it is very frog-like as far as its attacks concerned. However, when you get to the end of this boss fight and you win, you do get a cutscene kill. You know, the classic. And it turns out that this is actually a cursed prince. And after you kill him, he turns back into a dude. Because his guts are made of acid and it kind of fucks you up. But then you look over and it's not actually a frog, it's just a dude. And you just killed a dude that was cursed. Which is like, it's kind of fucked up. But it's a good boss fight. It's a really fun boss fight. I think it's an interesting start to the whole DLC, an interesting start to the story. It's pretty cool. I can't complain. Next up, we got the Toadstool from Don't Starve, which is a boss fight that you have to summon. Unfortunately, according to the wiki, it has no unique drops, and according to multiple things I could find, there's just no reason to fight this boss because it's, 1, really hard, and 2, doesn't give you anything useful. So a lot of people think you just shouldn't fight it. It's also not that interesting. It just kind of throws mushrooms out around it, and then if you're not standing on the mushrooms, you just keep hitting it. And if you are, you move and you hit it elsewhere. It's a fairly lame boss fight, but it looks really cool. And for that, he's a thumbs up. Don't Starve is an extremely hard game. I can't get anything going in that game. We're almost done. There's only 8 frogs left to rank. Next up, Toxic Croak, a frog I almost didn't include. But I decided, no, that's definitely a frog. And you know what, Toxic Croak? Toxic Croak's pretty good. I like Toxic Croak. He's a B tier frog for sure. Not a great frog. Not quite as good as Greninja as far as Pokemon are concerned. But it's definitely a Pokemon that I like that exists. It's not a Pokemon I don't like. And he's pretty cool. He definitely doesn't disappoint from his evolution. Unlike Seismitoad, who when you get, Palpitoad, you're like, oh, this evolution is going to be awesome. And then Seismitoad, it just is not. Krogunk is also awesome. Krogunk is a little bit better than Toxic Croak, but Toxic Croak is pretty great. I would rank them both in similar tiers. I don't think either is great, but they're both pretty good. Next up, Turgle. Turgle is from Star Wars Jedi Survivor. He is one of the species and inhabitants of the saloon that you find and is kind of your main base of operations for the game. He sucks. Like, as a person, he's the worst. He's a big old snitch. He snitches towards the Empire and consistently is trying to steal shit and get other people in trouble. He's kind of the worst, and he causes a lot of the problems in the game. And it's like, why are you the way that you are? It's the worst. I don't like him. No one like him. It's fucked up. Next up, we got, I think, the final boss fight of the ranking, which is Wart. And do I not have the Wart clip? I remember getting it yesterday. I got it. There we go. The final boss fight of Super Mario Bros. 2, otherwise known as the worst Mario Bros. Because it wasn't a Mario game and it was turned into a Mario game because they didn't think it would sell well based on the original IP. You just kind of let fruit come out of these pipes and then you chuck it at him. And he takes damage. And you do that enough times and he dies. Now, as on the contrary to everything I've said about Super Mario 2 and this boss fight, this guy is sick. Wart, the character design is awesome. I think it's cool to actually have a game where Bowser isn't the end villain. I think there's only like 2 or 3 Mario games total that do that, which is like crazy. And it's like this one, Bowser's Inside Story. Yeah, it's like, it's not awful, and he's pretty good. Like he's a pretty good villain. I'm not gonna complain about getting Wart as a villain. He's certainly pretty cool. Next up, we got Warts from Hamtaro, which I included because there's just apparently a lot of Hamtaro games similar to Hello Kitty, even though I think it's originally an anime show. But Warts is just a little hamster in a frog suit, and that's awesome. I don't even need to say anything else. That's awesome. It's a hamster in a frog suit. That's sick. The Webkinz Frog. Woo! We finally get the final four. The Webkinz Frog. Fun fact about the Webkinz Frog, it was the first ever Webkinz of the month, which they ran for, I think, only like 20 months. But it was the first one, which is crazy to think, because I didn't think the frog was released that early into Webkinz, but it was. When you get the frog, its unique item is a lily pad waterbed, which is kind of awesome. It is also one of the Webkinz that appears in the most minigames, as it appears in both the lily pads game as the only Webkinz that appears in that game, and it also appears in Jazz Monsters as a what does it play in Jazz Monsters? It appears in Jazz Monsters as the piano player. And you know what? Webkinz Frog, pretty good. I had one of these as a kid. It's pretty good. Next up, Winky the Frog from Donkey Kong Country. So Winky the Frog was initially supposed to appear in a lot more games than he did. He was supposed to appear in Donkey Kong 64 in a similar fashion to Rammy the Rhino, but ended up being cut last minute. So Winky is one of the support animals that appears and helps out the characters in certain levels. And his whole level, and the only level he appears in, is extremely short. So you can get to him within like 10 seconds, and he jumps extra high, which is pretty awesome. You need it to collect the Kong, but for the most part, Winky's Walkway is pretty easy level. But he's pretty cool. We love any frog who's homies with monkeys. Like, that's just kind of cool. That's a thumbs up. Next up, penultimately, we got the Wally Hop from Pikmin. They appear in almost every Pikmin game. They are the weakest in Pikmin 1, and they get buffed and made a lot harder in Pikmin 2 and 3. They're basic enemies. They're found in or near water. Usually, like most enemies in Pikmin, they just kind of want to be left alone. They don't attack you unless you go near it, and if you go near it and then run away, it'll forget about you and just kind of ignore you, which is pretty chill, you know? It's a frog. Finally, last, certainly not least, it's not going to be an F tier, is Zach from Hotline Miami. It's one of the unlockable masks in the game. It looks really sick. It's definitely a frog. You can tell it's a frog. And it allows for more time between every kill to remain a concurrent combo, which is useful as far as like making high combos in the game, high score, high money, and some achievements need high combos. So it's pretty good. And just like that, I've ranked every frog. I'll zoom out a bit so we can see it all. 100% can't see it all. Just like that. That is all the frogs in video games ever ranked. And you know what? Let's put on the finale music. Thank you to everyone for showing up. I appreciate it. I spent way too much time on this really shitty idea. But you know what? We ranked some frogs today. And that is pretty sick. and I might turn this into a YouTube video where I actually put effort into it and edit actual clips together of the frogs, where it's not just like me picking frogs and being like, yeah, this is the thing. But I like frogs a lot, and I thought this was a really dumb idea, and I had motivation to do it, so I did it. I also just wanted this song as an ending, because I think this game that this song is from is extremely underrated, and it's a beautiful ending song. I just want to say thank you all for tuning in again. I had fun. I hope you all had fun. I will catch you all very soon for something stupid like this again. But I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a fun couple hours.